Have we got the presentation coming up? Thank you. Firstly, let me say how pleased I am to be here today. I'm very much looking forward to finding out more about branding in Turkey and some of the things that are happening. I want to talk today a little bit about how we think about our brands in the future, think about our brands going forward. We spend a lot of time thinking about what our brands are doing today, and I want to think systematically about what our brands could do tomorrow. So I want to talk about building and leveraging brand assets and how we can understand where they can go, the potential, and where they can't go, their limits. So my thesis is that I want to talk about, if we want to maximise the value that we get from our brands, the expected net present value from our brands, then my belief is that we're missing in industry, we're missing some parts of the puzzle, or we're at least underrepresenting them. And I want to talk about some parts which are very simple, very easy to implement, where we might be able to do perhaps a better job of analysing and calibrating what our brands can do and what we should do to make them do those things. So how can we think about where our brands can go and where they will go and how much that's worth? If we think about our brand equity is going to tell us what we own in the customer's mind, and that brand equity will create value for the firm, and that brand value that comes from the brand comes from the earnings that the brand will give. So how do we work out what those future earnings are of the brand? Because that is what represents our brand value. And I want to think about that in a fairly simple way. Now, let me start by saying that there are two sorts of marketers. There are quantitative marketers who look at numbers, and there are behavioural marketers. So we have people who do qualitative marketing or behavioural marketing, and they ask the process questions. What do people do before they enter this market? Why do they enter the market? How do they think about pricing, etc.? And they try to understand the process. They're the psychologists, the anthropologists, the ethnographers, etc. And then we have the quantitative marketers who tend to try and put numbers on things. How many people will enter? How much will they be prepared to pay? When will they enter? The number people who are the statisticians and the economists. I started off as a mathematical statistician before they moved my branch in the telephone company into marketing, so I became a marketing director just because of the organisational change. And statisticians get a bad rap. Statisticians don't have a good reputation. No one thinks that statisticians are normal. Well, statisticians are normal. I was normal. When I was young, I used to go to dances, dance with young ladies, make polite conversation. And those who don't believe me, I have a picture here of when I was young at a dance, making polite conversation with a young lady. And so here I am at this dance, the Association of Statisticians annual dance, making polite conversation. Do you come here often, occasionally, infrequently? Never? You've got to ask, if marketing statisticians get such a bad reputation, why did I go into quantitative marketing rather than behavioural marketing? I want to show you a picture of behavioural marketing in action at Procter & Gamble. It's not a pretty picture, but nonetheless it's a true one. Here they all are taking their observations, and it's worse than it looks. It says, without a pre-measurement, it's difficult to identify the effect of an experimental treatment. At this Cincinnati research facility, each subject's natural body scent is being judged prior to the testing of a deodorant formulation. So not only do you have to do this once, you've got to do it twice and then be able to tell the difference. If you still want to know why I became a quantitative marketer rather than a behavioural marketer, I don't think I can help you. So what I want to do in the hour or so I have at my disposal is I want to talk very quickly about what I think brand equity is and why it's valuable. And I want to move from there and say, you know, brands are like other intangibles in the firm as well. We have these brand intangibles. We have customer relationships, which are another intangible and valuable. We have these channel relationships, which are another intangible and valuable. So given we have these intangibles, how can we understand them? And in particular, as managers just have to do two things. Managers have to hang on to what they've got, in other words, defence, and managers have to get more, in other words, grow the business. So how can we use these weapons, the brands, the customer relationships, the channel relationships, how can we use these weapons at our disposal to hang on to what we've got, to defend our turf, and to get more turf to grow? So I want to talk about growth and defence. I want to use a fairly old but very, very useful framework to do that, the Ansoff matrix. And then I want to talk about how we can maximise the value in each of these before I talk about the implications, firstly, for how we plan, what we do, and secondly, for how we measure, which is what we work out whether we've done well or not done well. So let me start by talking about what is brand equity. What does that mean? And I'll be fairly quick because most people will have some idea about brand equity, and I'm sure that David will also talk about brand equity. So let me just quickly suggest that Kevin Keller, who's one of the primary experts of brand equity, suggests that customer-based brand equity is the differential effect that knowing the brand has on the consumer's response. So if I give you a glass of cola and I ask you what you think of it, if I give you a glass of cola, the same glass, the same cola, but tell you it's Coca-Cola, then your brain will actually light up in different ways. There's actually a physiological response that brands give to us as consumers. So if brand equity or customer-based brand equity is the differential knowledge that the brand gives us, is it that I know that I'm flying Turkish Airlines makes me feel more comfortable, more safe, I know that I'll be well looked after, for example. That's what Turkish Airlines owns in the customer's mind. And Kevin Keller suggests that brand equity has got two parts. It's got its sources, which is what we own in the customer's mind, and its outcomes, which is what those sources enable us to do in the marketplace. And so the sources of brand equity might be things like awareness. Do people recognise our brand? Can they recall our brand? And their associations, which is what do they associate with our brands, or what are their beliefs or perceptions about our brands, and are they strong, are they favourable, and are they unique? Those things that we own in the customer's mind enable us to then do different things. People may recommend us more because they like our brand, they know a lot about it. People may regard our brand as their favourite brand because of what they associate with our brand. People may be prepared to pay more for our brand, a price premium, or we may be able to take our brand into different categories. And so, given that brand equity is what we own in the customer's mind, and that is an intangible asset for the firm, how does that relate to other intangible assets that we have? So we know what we have and what we can do with it. We can now think, well, brand equity, what we own in the customer's mind, is one of three major marketing assets we have, which is firstly our brand, which is what we do. Secondly, our supply chain management or channels, which is how we do it. And then thirdly, our customer relationship management, which is to whom we do it. And these are the three major marketing assets that we have to measure. And the question I've got is, when you people think about your brand, and you're proud of your brand, you like your brand, and you expect to earn revenues from your brand going forwards, how do you think about where we can take what we own in the customer's mind, and where can we exploit it and use it to keep what we've got, defence, and to get more? So, as I say, managers only have two challenges ahead of them. If we're a manager in the current position in that graph in time, and we're going along with a certain level of share or profit or revenue, and we're moving forwards, you might forecast that, let me just see whether I can, yeah. You might forecast that moving forwards, we might just keep on track, and our forecast would be that we'll keep on going. But that won't happen because there are threats in the environment, and in fact, if we don't cover those threats, then we'll start going downhill, and so we need to put strategies in place to actually make sure we hang on to what we've got. The first line in the Hippocratic Oath for doctors is first, do no harm. In other words, how can you make sure that you hang on to what you've got? Defence. And major firms are very bad at doing this. You don't go to your manager and say to her, I've worked out how I won't lose market share next year. She'll say, of course you have. So we don't spend time, especially market leaders, we don't spend enough time thinking about defence. But even if we do defend what we've got to get more and we've got to have opportunities. So the manager's only two jobs in this world are to get profitable defence and earnings, maintain our earnings, and then to get more. And so how can we use our brands to actually hang on to what we've got, our defence, and to get more? And so firstly, if we think about what we're doing today, our existing products in our existing markets. Most of you will have heard of the product life cycle, and that is that the sales of a product are not generally static or stationary or still. They go through a cycle where at the introduction they're small, they start growing, they reach some level of maturity, which could go for a long time, and then they decline. And so a lot of marketers believe in the product life cycle. Some people don't believe in the product life cycle. But that's a very bad question. The question not is, do we believe in the product life cycle or not? The question is, what's driving the product life cycle? Because once we work out what's driving the product life cycle, then as managers, we can actually influence it. We can make sure we do get growth. We can make sure that when we get to maturity, this is as high up as we can possibly make it. We can make sure that we do try and stall decline and make sure that decline doesn't happen. And so if your job is defence and growth, what are the challenges in our existing product markets, what we're doing today with our brands, that will enable us to keep on going? And I want to introduce the idea of persistence. So earnings persistence, if we think of the profit that we're getting in a period, so this little pi t is the profit that we're getting in a period. If we compare the profit we're getting in a period to the profit we got in the previous period, if we get more profit in this period than the previous period, then our persistence of earnings is going to go up. If we get less profit in this period to our previous periods, our persistence is going to be less than 1 and it's going to go down. And so you can see that where we're growing, our earnings tomorrow are greater than our earnings today, so our persistence is greater than 1 here. When we get to maturity, our persistence is 1, our earnings tomorrow are the same as our persistence today, and then when we get into decline, we get less money tomorrow than we got today, and so on. And so how can we actually use this for defence and growth? Well, firstly, for defence, the two challenges for defence are, there are only two challenges, which is, can we keep on getting these earnings, these profits, longer and longer and push this product life cycle out further? And the second one is, even when we reach decline, quite often there's still some residual share left. So as managers, your job with your brands is, even if your brand is in decline, can you slow that decline? And can you make sure that it doesn't decline to 0, but it declines to some very nice profitable amount? So to give you two examples, one example with BMW came to me and they said, John, when we announced the 7 Series, everyone stops buying the new 7 Series, everyone stops buying the old 7 Series. And so the product life cycle of the old 7 Series is actually driven by the announcement of the new one. And they said to me, can you help us and explain to us how we can actually delay this product life cycle and push it out further? And one of the things we came up with was this pre-certification program. If you buy an old model, a new old model 7 Series, then if you're going to trade it in, if it's not going to lose any of its value, then in fact I'll be more inclined to buy an old 7 Series than I would before. And BMW got into the used car market purely because it wanted to push out these income streams and earn the profit for longer and longer. So we can try and extend our product life cycle so we don't have to decline as quickly as we would before. The other thing we can do is, even when we do get decline, we'll still probably keep some customers. And how can we maximise the residual share that we get from that? So when the Japanese launched the quartz watch movement, a lot of Swiss companies tried to keep their share, and here's an advertisement for Blancpain watches. Since 1735, there has never been a quartz Blancpain watch, and there never will be. So Blancpain, the Swiss watch industry, decided we're going to lose a lot of share to the quartz movement from Japan, but we will try and make the value of the share that we keep as big as profitable, and we'll just keep on making that share indefinitely. So you've got a brand. Firstly, protect it. Protect it by making sure that the income streams keep going for as long as possible, and even if they do decline, make sure that they decline to a high level, not to a low level. That's the challenge for defence, and we know quite a lot about how to defend our brands. To defend our brands, we should look at the sources of attack. Who's going to attack us? And we better have good competitive intelligence. Once we understand where we'll get attacked, we have to understand the asymmetries in the market. Where are we better than our competitor? Where is our competitor better than us? And work out where we can defend ourselves, and then we develop a winning strategy. And so if we're attacked, we can have a winning strategy by having a better position. We can try and outflank our attacker. We can move before our attacker preemptively. We can have some other counteroffensive. We could have a dynamic attack where we attack mobile in different ways, or we could run away and play a different game. And this is based on some work that I published in the Harvard Business Review about 7 years ago as to how we can continue to defend our brands. So the first thing, the doctor's first line, first do no harm. You have these wonderful brand assets, work out how you're going to defend them. Then, of course, you've got to work out how you're going to grow them. And we can grow them in 3 different ways. The first way we've got to grow them is how can we get the money early? How can we speed up the diffusion process so that people buy our brands earlier and earlier, our new products earlier and earlier, and how can we accelerate the diffusion process? The second challenge is how can we grow the product life cycle? In other words, how, when we get to equilibrium, how can we have more and more and more people buying our brands? How can we grow the product life cycle? And then perhaps the third challenge for growth is how can we reduce the volatility or the cyclicality, the up and down movements of our product life cycle. So to give you some examples, this is a picture of Whoopi Goldberg just buying her first iPhone. Apple does a fantastic job of accelerating earlier than later. Next, Coca-Cola does a fantastic job in terms of growing the product life cycle. Coca-Cola tries to make sure that everyone who drinks Coca-Cola can have access to it anytime, at any place. Coca-Cola's motto used to be within an arm's length. In other words, I'm always within an arm's length of a Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola's done a fantastic job of actually getting Coke drinkers to drink Coke more and more and more often. And then how can we reduce the volatility? So this is the logo of the Aspen Institute in Colorado in the United States. The Aspen, of course, is a great ski resort. So that means there's all of the summer that it's not being used for. So if we can reduce the volatility of earnings by, during the summer when people aren't skiing, we'll actually have an educational institution, and so that we reduce the volatility of the earnings by getting earnings through the summer rather than just getting them during the winter and reduce the volatility. So we've got our brands. We're going to keep getting those rents, those earnings for as long as possible. Even if we lose some of them, we're going to try and get the residual value of the earnings as much as possible. We're going to try and accelerate them and get them as early as possible. We're going to try and grow them and get them as big as possible. And we're going to try and reduce the volatility because accountants and finance people don't like volatility. So that's in a summary, how we might want to grow what we're doing today. What we're doing with our existing products in our existing markets. But let's think about what we might want to do beyond our existing products and our existing markets. It may well be that we should have new products and new product categories, and we should have new markets and new geographies. And Igor Anzov suggested that there are really 4 ways to grow. we can grow in our existing products with our existing markets, which is what we've been talking about. But we can actually launch new products for our existing markets by product development, or we could actually take our existing products and move them into new markets, or we could actually develop new products for new markets. And this has actually been extended a little bit by David Archer, who said we can actually move beyond that. So Archer still talked about new products and new markets, and existing markets and new markets. He still talked about existing products and new products, but he added another dimension and said we can actually vertically integrate too and provide more of what we do. Let's compare this to Srivastava's market-based assets that I spoke to you about before. Remember I said, Raj Srivastava said, you own three things in intangibles. You own your brands and your products, you own your customers and your customer relationships, and you own your supply chains and your channels. And so Archer suggests you can use your brands to actually grow into new markets, to actually grow new products, to actually get into new channels. And so how can we use our brands to leverage new products, exploiting the associations of our brands? How can we use our brands to actually get into a new market? Or how can we use our brands to create value in the channel? So to give you an example of new products, Arm & Hammer is a baking soda in the United States. People in America are very busy, they're baking less and less. So Arm & Hammer was very surprised that its sales weren't going down, they were going up, given people were baking less. They found out that people were using baking soda to put in their refrigerator so that to get rid of the smells in the refrigerator. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is an oxidant, so it absorbs the odours. And so when they found that out, they launched, given people were using this baking soda to put in their fridge, they did the sensible thing and they launched a new product, fridge and freezer deodorant, so that they could exploit this new product, which the brand Arm & Hammer had associations with being able to do. I went to Brazil a few years ago and went up the Amazon. As I was being rowed up the Amazon, 150 kilometres away from the nearest store, I came across someone doing their washing. And here they were doing their washing with a pack of Omo, 150 miles from the nearest store. The multinationals have done a fantastic job of taking their existing and present products and brands and taking them into new markets. Or alternatively, we can vertically integrate. So Federal Express thought, we don't want to be a freight delivery company, we want to be an office services company. So Federal Express took over Kinko's, which is a copying service in America, and Federal Express vertically integrated into Kinko's. So you've got these brand assets. How are you going to exploit them into new products, into new markets, and through new channels? Because you're the custodians of them. So we're going to try and get as much income in our present markets, with our present channels, with our present products as we can, but we're also going to laterally grow as well. So let's think about growth beyond the core. Let's think about growth beyond the products and the markets that we're doing at the moment. So if we do want to expand beyond our current activities, beyond our existing products, beyond our existing markets, beyond our existing channels, we can do it by launching new products, entering new markets, or developing new channels. How do we work out, is that a good thing to do with our brand or not? Well, the amount that we're going to earn from any new opportunity is the size of that opportunity times our share that we're going to get from that opportunity. So should, for example, Turkish Airlines enter the market, the travel market to Australia, putting regulatory considerations to one side? Well, is the Australian market a big market? How big is the market? And what is the market power, or what brand equity does Turkish Airlines have to bring to the Australian market? And we can think of the size of the opportunity, the size of the market, by how big is this market going to be in equilibrium, and how close, how well developed is this market. We can think of the share that we're going to get in this market by how strong is the firm, what brand equity has the firm got, multiplied by is that brand equity really going to be useful in this new market or category or not? Is there some fit of the strength of the brand? And so if we look at Starbucks coffee, for example, Starbucks coffee could think about entering China. China's market is at a very, very early stage of development in terms of coffee. Not many Chinese people have coffee, so it's not attractive in terms of the stage of development, but it's very attractive in terms of the fact that no one else is competing for coffee. And so Starbucks has got the opportunity to really do quite well in the Chinese market if they can develop it. If you think of Starbucks coffee in Spain, Starbucks coffee has also entered Spain, the Spanish market is very developed, which is great, but of course it's also very, very competitive too. And so Starbucks in Europe is having terrible trouble because although the markets are very big and very well developed, the relative strength of Starbucks actually is quite low in Europe. And Starbucks is finding it's much easier to actually be strong in an undeveloped market than to be weak in a highly developed market. But when you think of your opportunities in growth beyond the core, in growth beyond your existing products and existing markets, then the sorts of where you're going to get high earnings are where the opportunity is big and your ability to take advantage of that opportunity is also substantial. Let me move from talking in marketing terms to talking in financial terms. What does this mean in terms of money? Well, what it means in terms of money is that if we're thinking about what we do today, our existing markets, which we're in at the moment, and our existing products that we're in our market, so this is our business today. How much is our brand worth given our business today, given what we do at the moment, and given where we do it? Then the value of our brands is just the expected net present value of the earnings that we'll get from that. But of course, we might do new products, and that gives us market leverage. We leverage off the market and our brands to actually develop new products. And if we add up how much we're going to get from what we do today, together with how much we're going to do with what we could do tomorrow in our existing markets, this is what we call in marketing our customer equity. This is the value of our existing markets, what we earn given what we're doing to those markets today, plus what we will earn given what we're going to do to those markets tomorrow. So this is the value of market equity or customer equity. This is the value of given what we're doing today, how much earnings we're going to get out of that in the future, discounted by the time value of money and risk. We can look vertically as well. With our existing products, we can think about how much money we're going to make out of those products in our current markets, but we can also think about how much money we would make if we entered new markets and the product leverage, and if we add up for our existing products, what we earn from our existing markets, what we'll earn from our new markets, then we end up with our brand equity as well, which is what our existing products are going to do for us. If we then think about what's new is we could develop these new products, and the value of those new products is how much they're going to get in our existing markets plus how much they'll get in new markets, and this is the value that we get from new product development. If we think about the new markets we could enter, the value of those new markets, the value that we get from our existing products, plus the value that we might get from any new products we'd launch in them, and that tells us the value, the customer acquisition value, the new customer acquisition value, how much money we're going to get, the earnings that we're going to get in our new markets. And then, of course, if you add up our brand equity, what we get from our existing products, and our new product equity, which is our NPV value, you get the value of the firm. You get the same number as if you add up the value of what we get from our current markets plus the value of what we're going to get from our future markets, you also get the value of the firm. So the point I want to make to you people is you've got these brands. You know they're good. A lot of you are monitoring those brands and working out what people believe about them. You know you're going to earn money in the future, but you ought to be able to tell me where you're going to earn that money. Are you going to earn that money by protecting your existing product markets? Are you going to earn that money by developing new products in those markets? Are you going to earn that money by entering new markets and leveraging off the products you've got, or by breaking out, and how much? Now, it's not hard to do that. And I guess my point is that I really think that you should be doing that. So I want to actually start closing, because this will help us catch up a little bit of time, I hope. I want to finish closing by talking firstly about the implications of this for what you do, and secondly, the implications of this for what you measure. So in terms of what you do, in terms of evaluating your strategies, everyone wants to know, have you done well? Let's say that the share of Pepsi goes up by 2%. Was that a good outcome or not? I don't know. And I can't know until I know how well Pepsi could have done. Maybe the share of Pepsi should have gone up by 4%. I don't know. And so we can't evaluate our marketing until we have a benchmark against which to evaluate it. Now, some people use the benchmark of last year's sales or last year's share or last year's profits. Some people use the benchmark of how well the competitors are doing. Some people use the benchmark of objectives. How well did we hope to do? But the benchmark you should be using is how well could you have done? And the whole thing about how well you could have done is you can't tell how well you could have done until you've systematically worked out what you could have done, until you've brainstormed all of the options. So one of the nice things about brand valuation is it brings creativity back into marketing where it belongs. We can't tell the